There is a Japanese word composed of 4 characters: yin, mei, tao, li. Cherry blossom, plum blossom, peach blossom, apricot blossom, Oubaitori. 4 flowers, 4 completely different plants, 4 completely different moments in the year when each one decides to bloom. The cherry tree does not bloom in winter alongside the plum. The plum does not wait for spring to arrive with the cherry. The peach has its own time. The apricot has its own form. And none of them is doing it wrong. Each flower has its own timing, its own particular way of being beautiful, and the garden is richer for all of them being different. This is the concept of Oubaitori, that each person, like each flower, has their own nature, their own timing, and their own form of flourishing, and that comparing them to each other is not just useless. It fundamentally misunderstands what they are. I want to start with the comparison problem, because that is where most people live. You are probably already aware of how often you compare yourself to other people. Most people are. The awareness does not stop it from happening. You see someone your age who has accomplished more, someone who seems to have it together in some way you do not, someone who moved faster, figured it out sooner, built something earlier, found their direction while you were still searching for yours. And when you see that, something happens inside you. It is not exactly jealousy, though it can become that. It is more like a calculation of subtraction. You look at what they have done, and then you look at yourself. And the result is a kind of deficit. A sense that you are behind, that something is wrong with where you are. This feeling is so common that we have stopped questioning whether the calculation itself makes sense. Oubaitori asks you to question it. Here is what the comparison is actually doing. It is taking 2 completely different organisms, each with their own root systems, their own relationship to the soil, their own temperature requirements, their own internal clock, and evaluating them by a single standard at a single moment in time. It is standing in a garden in March and looking at a cherry tree that has not bloomed yet, and saying the plum tree is blooming, something is wrong with the cherry. This is obviously absurd when you say it about trees. The cherry tree is not behind. The cherry tree is on schedule. It is just not the plum tree's schedule, because it is not the plum tree. The comparison is not measuring the cherry tree's progress. It is measuring the distance between 2 things that are not trying to be the same thing, and then treating that distance as a failure. This is what comparison does to people. It measures the gap between you and someone else, and calls that gap your inadequacy. But the gap is not your inadequacy. The gap is just the space between 2 different things that are not supposed to be the same. Though there is a particular cruelty in comparison that is worth naming. Comparison almost always operates on visible outputs. What someone has built, published, earned, or achieved. The things that can be seen and measured from the outside. And it ignores everything that is not visible. The different starting points, the different resources, the different internal struggles, the different costs, the different trade-offs that no one announces. You see the bloom. You do not see the root system. You do not see the particular quality of the soil, the winters that tree survived before it ever flowered, the years of growth that happened underground before anything appeared above the surface. When you compare yourself to someone else's visible accomplishments, you are comparing your interior with all its complexity, all its difficulty, all its invisible ongoing effort to someone else's exterior. And the exterior always wins that comparison. That is what makes it feel so devastating. It is not a fair measurement. It was never a fair measurement. It is a comparison between 2 things that cannot actually be compared, conducted at a single moment in time that tells you almost nothing about either of them. Here is what Oubaitori is not, because I think this idea is often softened in ways that miss its actual force. The common version of this idea goes, everyone is unique. Comparison is the thief of joy. Run your own race. These are fine as far as they go, but they stay at the level of advice things you tell yourself to feel better. They acknowledge the comparison, then try to counter it with a competing feeling. Run your own race, but the race is still there, and you are still on it. Oubaitori is not trying to counter the feeling. It is trying to dissolve the premise. The premise is that there is a single timeline, everyone is on a track, a universal schedule, and some people are ahead while others are behind. If you accept that, then stop comparing is just telling yourself not to look at the scoreboard. The scoreboard is still there. Oubaitori says the track does not exist. There is no single timeline that all people are supposed to be ahead or behind on. There are only different organisms, with different natures, on different schedules, producing different flowers at different times. The person you are comparing yourself to is not ahead of you on your timeline. They are on a completely different timeline entirely, because they are a completely different organism entirely. The moment you really internalize this, the question, "Am I behind?" loses its meaning. Behind relative to what? Behind on whose schedule? The cherry tree in March is not behind. It is simply the cherry tree. Though there is something else Oubaitori is pointing to that is harder to talk about. Not just that different people bloom at different times, but that each person has a specific nature, a particular form of flourishing that is theirs and not anyone else's. And that you can spend a great deal of your life not knowing what yours is, because you have been so busy measuring yourself against someone else's version. The plum tree that spent its energy trying to be a cherry tree would not produce better plum blossoms. It would produce nothing. The attempt to become what it is not would use up exactly the resources that would have allowed it to become what it is. This is what constant comparison costs you, not just the obvious thing, the anxiety and self-criticism, and the slow accumulation of a feeling that you are not enough, but the subtler thing, the attention, the energy, the orientation that could have gone toward discovering and developing your own nature, spent instead measuring yourself against someone else's. Every hour you spend calculating the gap between yourself and someone else is an hour, not spent on the question that actually matters. What is the specific form of flourishing that belongs to me? Though there is a way to use Oubaitori that is not passive. It is not a philosophy of waiting, of sitting still and hoping your season comes eventually. The plum tree still has to grow roots. It still has to survive winters. It still has to do the actual work of being a tree in its own particular way toward its own particular flowering. Oubaitori does not remove the effort. It redirects it. What Oubaitori removes is the misdirection. The energy that was going toward comparison and deficit calculation, toward tracking your distance from other people, can go back into the actual work, into figuring out what your particular form of flourishing looks like. And moving toward it, the question shifts from why am I not where they are to what does progress actually look like for something with my specific nature, my specific starting point, my specific season? Those are very different questions. The first one has no satisfying answer because the premise is broken. The second one is something you can actually work with. The first keeps you oriented toward other people's lives. The second keeps you oriented toward your own. Though there is a kind of freedom in Oubaitori that is easy to miss on first encounter. If everyone is on the same timeline, and some people are ahead, then you have something to feel ashamed of. You are falling behind on a race that everyone is running, in full view of everyone running it. But if there is no single timeline, if each person is genuinely on their own schedule, producing their own specific flowers, then no one can be behind. You can only be early or late relative to your own nature, your own particular unfolding. And even that framing assumes you know in advance when you were supposed to bloom. Most of us do not. Most of us are discovering our season by living it. What Oubaitori offers finally is not comfort. It is accuracy. It gives you a more accurate picture of what you actually are, not a slower version of someone else, not a person failing to keep up with a schedule that was never yours, but a particular organism with a particular nature in a particular season, one that may not have arrived yet, one that may look completely different from the seasons around you, doing exactly what that organism does. The cherry tree is not failing to be a plum. It is succeeding at being a cherry. The timing is different. The form is different. The flowers, when they come, will be entirely its own. The flowers are not competing. They are each doing what they are. And the garden is large enough, and the year is long enough for all of them. If this way of thinking speaks to you, follow this channel. There is more Japanese wisdom where this came from.